Hi, I'm Bart Landwehr with Tight Lines Fly Fishing Company, and today I will be tying the Bart-O Minnow. Bart-O Minnow is a pattern that I came up with some years ago now to use for smallmouth bass. It's a rather large, unweighted bait fish pattern, works well on a floating line. Start off, I'm going to use some gel spun thread, very strong. For the materials that I'm going to be putting on this fly, I need a lot of thread strength. I'm just going to start my thread. I'm going to take my thread back to the point of the hook for this fly. The hook that we're using to tie this fly is a TMC 8089. I prefer it in a size 6 or a size 10. I like the 6 probably best because it builds the biggest profile fly for me. And to start this fly, what I use is a bucktail. I lay a bucktail down for the first part of the tail. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build a body. That's probably, I like these flies big. I'm going to make this tail probably stick out about 3 to 4 inches behind the fly. Lay that on top. And I'm going to make sure, because bucktail has a tendency to slip, that I'm going to secure this very well with my tying thread. Back up front and clip the excess deer hair out. Make sure I clean it up nice, because this fly has a tendency to get some bulk if you're not very careful. You have to make every thread wrap count. Alright, the next part of this fly, what I do before I put my topping or my overwing on, I'm going to put some flash in. And I'm going to put both silver flashabou as well as pearlescent flash. And I'm going to probably select, I don't know, about 7 strands of it. And what I typically do is I cut it long when I tie it in, because I can always go back and trim it to the length I want. Again, I'm going to top that with about 7 strands of pearl. I'm going to go in and cut off the tags here. What I like to do as far as trimming this stuff is I want it to be just a little bit longer than the bucktail. I'm going to just go in and cut it to size. Alright, next material I'm going to use is Icelandic sheep. Go ahead and use a gray Icelandic sheep. I'm going to grab a fairly good chunk of Icelandic for my overwing. Cut that off, and what I want to do is I want it to be just about the same length as my flash. Trim the excess. Next move I'm going to make here is I'm going to put some lateral lines on this fly. What I'm going to use are some peacock curls. I use 2 for each side on the fly. I have seen this fly, people come in and tie it and do variations where they use mylar, which is probably a bit more durable, but that broad mylar has a tendency when you're casting it to make a flapping sound just like grass on a fly. And as a guide, grass equals no fish. And anytime I hear that sound, I want to check a fly. So I do not use mylar, because I don't want to be tricked into thinking I have grass on my bug. And these also are the length of everything else I've done so far. Makes a nice silhouette. Should be just fine. This gets wet, it just has a great profile. It's got some bulk to it, and it retains its shape because of that bucktail, so it doesn't squish out like a pencil in the water. Next thing I do, I'm a big fan of red on flies. I think red is a trigger. So when I came up with this fly, I wanted to get some red in there some way, and what a better place than, gill slash. I messed around with some different materials, and I ended up using rabbit because it just has the best qualities in the water, I think, for what I'm looking for here. Just kind of get it to part the hook. And carefully get that thread to catch. Now the next move is something that everybody wants to know. I incorporated this fiber. Is it for the flash? What's it for? This ice fur that I put on. I put this collar of ice fur, and to be quite honest with you, it's because I've just built a big giant monkey fist of material right here, and I need to cover that up because that's not pretty. I'm going to top this overwing with some ice fur, like so. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend it back on top, and I'm going to cut it just a bit longer, this fold over, because why I've done that is I'm going to wrap it around the bottom now to cover the underside, and you're going to lose a little bit of length In order to have them both match up relatively the same length, you need to cut one back. Okay, so essentially now I have built the entire back side of my fly. There you go. From this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build up the head, which originally was a big pain in the rear because what I used was a material called angel fur, and I did it in a dubbing loop. And dubbing loops take time. But what I want to do first is I want to cover up this hook shank. I got to build up some bulk here to make my head nice and big. I'm going to use chenille for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down a piece of chenille, and I really want to secure this tightly. So I'm going to tie it in, and then I'm going to wrap my tag all the way forward. Now when I wrap this, I'm going to wrap it nice and tight. And then what I also like to do, because anytime you're working with a lot of materials on a hook, they can have a tendency to start to spin on you. So I like to lash everything down as many times as possible, as many times as I can get away with. So I'm going to take my thread and go back over the top of this chenille. I don't care how compressed or ugly this looks because it's going to be covered up. Alright, now, next material I'm going to use has saved me hours on the vise. And that is a pre-made EP sparkle brush. And I actually run that wire right to the front before I snip it. Tie it all the way down. Now what you really want to do is have a cheap pair of scissors around to cut wire, but I don't, so these are Tim's anyway, so here we go. Cut that wire off. Sorry, Tim. Now I'm going to take this brush and I'm going to start to wrap it forward. What's real important, it's kind of like when you're tying marabou spays or other kind of flies like that, you want to kind of fold your material towards the back of the hook as you wrap it. It's interesting, you know, people look at this fly and they think it's a monster. You fish smallmouth bass with that? Yeah, I mean, this is... I wouldn't tie it any smaller for bass, personally. They absolutely destroy this. If you want to see a predator do its job, throw a big fly at it. I don't want to see a dainty little eat when it comes to a smallmouth. I want to see hate. Again, use the scissors that I shouldn't be to cut that wire. So I'm going to build a nice head up front. Alright. Now the next move here is I want to put my eyes on. And this is something that, through trial and error, learn the best way to do this is what you want to do is you want to go in your material and you want to cut down a kind of a landing pad, if you will, where you're going to place that eye, so there's not a lot of fluff in the way. Now the best way I've found to do this is to use Zap Gel. Okay, and Zap Gel is a little bit thicker than Zap-A-Gap, regular super glue. It sets up nicer with the 3D pearl eye that I use. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these out and I'm going to kind of get them ready in front of me. Put a little Zap Gel down on my first landing pad. What you have to be really careful of when you do this is that you don't touch the Zap Gel and then push the eye, because residue from the gel will get on your eye. The fly will probably still work, but it's going to have a cloudy spot on it. Again, just not as pretty. Get away from there. Now I'm going to take an eye real carefully. And I'm going to lay it against that landing pad. Now what I normally do is I take a bodkin or something that I know has not touched glue. I just hold that eye in place for about a 5 count. That's set. Okay? We'll do the other side. Alright, so I've got pretty much a completed minnow here. The only thing I've left to do is to top it. Okay? Natural minnow is going to have a dark back and a pearlescent underbody in many cases. So what I use is a Prismacolor marker in cool gray. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the broad side and just paint. Start to paint the angel hair. I think I called it angel fur earlier. It's angel hair. And take your time on the marker process, because it, you know, if you just do a short pass over it, it's not going to penetrate and really get good color in the fly. And that, my friends, is my Bart-O.